intelligence briefing. This is deep dive number 38. And since it's Sunday, well, let's be honest, the only real question is whether the markets are resting harder than you are. But either way, the intel never really takes a day off. Today is Sunday, August 24th, 2025. We're looking back at the intelligence brief for yesterday, Saturday the 23rd. Our mission, as always, is to dig into the sources you provided, pull out the key insights, make sense of it all for you, really.
Yeah, looking at Saturday's intel, the overall threat level is holding it moderate. We've got a mix of things: climatic extremes, crime crackdowns, regional conflicts still simmering. Nothing individually hitting, say, a high severity threshold, but you've got persistent friction points. Gaza, Russia's war strategy, Europe's heat, the U.S. domestic situation. It all adds up to sustained geopolitical risk. In terms of sources, we're mostly looking at Admiralty Code B2. So reputable international media, official agencies. Our confidence is generally moderate, confidence 3. There's corroboration across sources, but, limited on the ground reporting in some spots affects the really granular tactical details. So the bottom line up front for Saturday, it's a picture of, well, converging crises and strategic moves right across the globe. You had Europe dealing with record heat, driving that AC adoption, but also showing infrastructure strain. North America saw a widening crime crackdown under Trump, National Guard out, new federal web projects. Asia faced serious natural hazards. Pakistan's mudslide lake is a big one, while Japan and South Korea tightened their cooperation. Middle East, intensification in Gaza, political delays in Syria, Iran talking up its missile tech. Then Africa pushing for economic reform, map fairness. Latin America navigating U.S. sanctions, Venezuela getting closer to China, and El Salvador's anti-gang push. Oceania had policy debates, health worker rules, tax ideas, quite the range.
Okay, yeah, that's a lot to cover. Let's unpack this. Definitely a fascinating mix today. Let's start in Europe. Climate and energy seem to be colliding there. Record heat driving this, well, incredible surge in air conditioning. Copernicus Climate Service confirmed Western Europe's June average was 24.9 Celsius. That's nearly 3 degrees above the normal baseline. So how are people, and maybe more importantly, how's the continent's infrastructure actually coping with this demand for cooling?
Right. It's more than just being uncomfortable. These heat waves are really exposing a critical vulnerability, Europe's energy infrastructure, its spine, really. It's not just about higher electric bills, though those are happening. It's like a silent stress test on the whole system. We're definitely tracking this expected spike in electricity demand, huge investment in AC units, and that brings supply chain issues, regulatory headaches, you name it. And our analysis shows a pretty clear link here. The heat waves track right alongside the AC demand surge. Wholesale power prices spiked about 5% week on week. And interestingly, energy stocks actually outperformed the broader market. You can feel the tension online, too. We tracked things like a Spanish climate activist tweeting something like, "Aircon is just a Band-Aid on a boiling planet. We need green buildings, not fossil-fueled coolers." That sentiment was echoed quite a bit. French social media, too, lots of memes contrasting, sweaty summers with the EU's climate goals. It's forcing this rapid, maybe even a bit chaotic shift in energy policy. NGOs are warning AC use could double Europe's electricity demand by 2040. Governments are scrambling, debating restrictions in France, subsidies in Italy and Spain. It's a real live issue.
That is a concerning picture for Europe. Let's shift, though, to a different kind of energy challenge coming from Russia. We're hearing Moscow's hardening its negotiating stance on the war, but at the same time, reports say their domestic gasoline production is actually falling. Are those things contradictory, or is this maybe Moscow trying to project strength because of weakness?
That's a really sharp question. You've got Foreign Minister Lavrov saying only Putin decides the war's terms, very maximalist. But our intelligence flags an elevated threat, B3 here, specifically around Russia's energy stability. The Institute for the Study of War is reporting a, significant 17.3% drop in Russian gasoline production just since January.
Wow, 17%.
Yeah. And that's linked to Western oil embargoes, Ukrainian drone strikes on refineries. It's leading to export cuts, rising prices inside Russia. It definitely raises the prospect of real fuel shortages hitting their farms, their industry. So yes, projecting power externally while dealing with very real economic pressure at home. That seems to be the dynamic.
Before we move on, just a quick note.
Yeah.
This deep dive is powered by NextSight. They're a global investigations and intelligence leader. Their OSINT platform, Site Connect, is actually what fuels these reports, and it lets you tailor intelligence to your own needs. Complex cross-border investigations, high-stakes corporate intelligence, they operate on another level. Fast, precise, fully corroborated. You can learn more at www.next-site.com. Okay, shifting continents now to North America, some pretty significant domestic debates happening, especially around public order. Tell us more about these National Guard deployments and the public reaction in U.S. cities.
Right, so Reuters detailed deployments, National Guard troops around monuments in Washington, D.C., interestingly, not necessarily in high crime zones.
Monuments.
Yeah. And then in Chicago, the mayor publicly pushed back hard, calling plans to send Guard units there unlawful. That was reported by WSVN CNN. This, plus the DHS calling for public help in immigration arrests. It points to a moderate threat, C3, around civil-military relations. It definitely looked like a more militarized approach to domestic law enforcement. And you see the public sentiment reflecting that. We tracked social media, saw comments like a DC resident asking why soldiers guarding monuments instead of helping police where shootings happen,
Right.
or a Chicago community organizer saying deploying troops feels like martial law dressed up as security. Our data suggests a correlation, maybe not surprising. Trump administration deployments seem to resonate positively with security-focused voters, but consumer confidence surveys show a bit of a dip in those metro areas affected. Could hit tourism, retail maybe.
Hmm.
And separately, but related to that crackdown theme, Homeland Security Investigations and ICE just wrapped up a big nationwide sweep. They arrested people they called the worst of the worst violent criminals. So definitely an elevated threat, B2, focus on domestic security there too.
And then, completely different gear shift here administratively. President Trump appoints Joe Gebbia, the Airbnb co-founder, to lead a new national design studio. The mission sounds huge. Overhaul 26,000 federal websites, make government services as easy as booking a vacation. That seems optimistic.
It's definitely ambitious. It's basically taking that private sector user experience playbook and applying it straight to government. Threat level. Low, B2, it's administrative reform. Gebbia's team is supposed to partner with agencies, streamline interfaces, improve accessibility. The studio itself is temporary, set to close after 3 years. But the goal isn't just user-friendliness. They anticipate long-term savings from better service delivery. It's a real attempt to modernize how the federal government interacts with people online.
As you're listening, just remember that Nextsite's capabilities go way beyond just reporting. They're OSINT specialists, they're investigative teams. They connect dots across borders, validate sources, map relationships. They turn signals into actionable strategy. Okay, let's move over to Asia. Nature making its presence felt there, definitely alongside evolving geopolitics. Pakistan, specifically, dealing with a really major natural hazard. What's the latest?
Yeah, it's a critical situation. A big mountain mudslide in Gilgit Baltistan blocked the Ishkuman River. It's formed this dangerous lake about 7 kilometers long now.
7 kilometers.
Huge. And it's threatening catastrophic flooding downstream. They had to evacuate people. This is on top of floods since June that have already killed nearly 800 people across Pakistan. And to make matters worse, the National Disaster Management Authority just issued another alert yesterday. Heavy rain, landslides, flash floods expected across multiple provinces through August 30th. So definitely an elevated threat level, B2, for both the immediate natural hazard and the broader disaster risk. The big fear is that makeshift mudslide dam just gives way. Huge humanitarian risk. We saw images online from a Gilgit resident saying something like, "We watch helplessly as the lake grows. Authorities have to act before it bursts." Really captures the urgency.
A really tense situation. Moving to diplomacy in Asia, though, there was a significant Japan-South Korea summit. Prime Minister Ishiba and President Lee Jae-myung agreed to boost cooperation on defense, economic security, AI, and this is right before Lee meets with President Trump. What's the read-through on this?
This looks like a pretty crucial move. It signals a united front against regional threats, think North Korea, China, primarily. That's a moderate threat level, B2 in terms of geostrategy. It also seems designed to smooth over some domestic concerns in South Korea about President Lee's past criticisms of Japan. Resuming that shuttle diplomacy, reaffirming the U.S., Japan, South Korea trilateral alliance, it's all pointing towards stronger alignment given the rising tensions in the region.
Okay, shifting now to the Middle East. Always complex, often deeply concerning situations there. The Israeli offensive in Gaza, reports say, continues to claim civilian lives and worsen the famine. What's the latest grim picture?
Yeah, the reports are stark. Israeli forces kill at least 63 Palestinians in intensified attacks on Gaza City and central areas. At the same time, the UN is warning that over 500,000 people, 514,000, are now facing famine conditions. That's a clear high threat level, C3, for both armed conflict and the humanitarian crisis. You had a UN aid worker posting on X basically saying famine is not looming, it's here. Just underscores the gravity. And adding to the diplomatic pressure, Turkey's First Lady, Emin Erdogan, wrote an open letter to Melania Trump, urging her to advocate for Gaza. That's flagged moderate threat, C2, diplomatically. We saw hashtags like #LetGazaLive trending in response. But, on the other side, Israeli commentators were dismissing it as political theater from Ankara. Shows the deep polarization. It's just immense suffering tangled with complex diplomacy.
And more instability nearby in Syria. Parliamentary voting delayed in several provinces, Swida, Raqqa, Hasaka, because of security issues. Seats just staying empty.
That's right. It really highlights how ongoing violence, sectarian clashes, Israeli airstrikes directly impacts any semblance of a democratic process there. Continued fighting between government forces, Islamist militants, tribal insurgents. It just makes voting unsafe. Fair elections are impossible in those areas right now. It signals a high threat level, C3 for political instability.
And then we have Iran. The Defense Minister Aziz Nasirzadeh making some pretty bold statements, confirming Iran has arms factories abroad, tested advanced warheads, and claiming they held back more precise missiles during the June war with Israel.
Yeah, this is classic strategic messaging from Iran. Projecting deterrence, showing resilience, especially aimed at Israel and other regional rivals. Publicly confirming overseas arms production, advanced missile tech. It's clearly meant to show their defense postures evolving, that their systems worked in June. It carries a high threat level, C3 for proliferation, absolutely.
Okay, let's move south to Africa. We're seeing this powerful push for economic sovereignty, kind of redefining global narratives. What's driving this focus on cartographic fairness and economic reforms?
It really underscores this dual push across Africa. Practical economic reform alongside a kind of psychological empowerment. You have Ghana's president, John Mahama, at the TICAD conference, pushing for rules-based trade under the AfCFTA, the Continental Free Trade Area, basically saying Africa is ready for business. And at the same time, the African Union is endorsing the Equal Earth Map projection. Why? To counter how the traditional Mercator map distorts Africa's true size, makes it look smaller than it is relative to, say, Europe.
Interesting, the map itself.
Exactly. It sounds symbolic, but challenging those old Eurocentric maps is part of combating lingering colonial mindsets, boosting confidence in African potential and markets. It's flagged low threat, B2, focusing on soft power and economic policy. We saw it ripple online. Students posting side-by-side maps, Mercator versus Equal Earth, saying things like, Africa is bigger than they told us. Ghanaian influencers celebrating Mahama's speech with hashtag Africa Open for Business. And our data shows this AU map campaign coincides with more social media buzz about African economic opportunities. Early signs of more interest in AfCFTA-linked ETFs, too. Plus, you had Japan's PM Ishiba pledging $100 million in AI training for 300,000 Africans. Signals growing external interest aligning with this internal push.
And on a security front there, Nigerian Air Force hitting ISWAP militants near Cameroon.
Yes, a preemptive strike. They killed at least 35 ISWAP fighters. Apparently, they had intelligence about a planned raid, so they hit assembly points near the Borno state border with Cameroon. It shows Nigeria's improving intelligence capabilities, their ongoing effort against insurgents. That remains a high threat level, B3, regarding terrorism in the region.
Right. Okay, down to Latin America now. U.S. sanctions shaping alliances. An op-ed suggesting sanctions have pushed Venezuela deeper into China's orbit. What are the implications there?
Well, it really highlights potential unintended consequences of sanctions, doesn't it? How they can actually shift global power dynamics. This is flagged moderate threat, C4, geopolitical and economic. The argument is that sanctions solidified the Venezuela-China alliance, letting Beijing get control over oil assets via these loan-for-oil deals, increasing its leverage. And you see some market reflection. Our correlational analysis shows Venezuela's deeper integration with China aligns with the rebound in Chinese state-owned energy firms' bond prices, suggests investor confidence. It fits an emerging pattern of Beijing using debt sometimes strategically to gain access to resources.
Another controversial policy nearby, El Salvador's international anti-game campaign, sparking due process concerns.
Yeah, El Salvador's issued over 1,500 Interpol red notices for alleged gang members abroad. It's a huge number. And it's raising serious human rights questions about due process, the risk of torture if people are extradited back. It carries a moderate threat, C3, to the rule of law. You hear the tension in public comments. We tracked a Salvadoran diaspora member saying something like, my cousin was picked up without a warrant. This isn't justice. But then you hear government supporters saying, gangs destroyed our families. Bukele is doing what others wouldn't. It's that classic difficult tension between security goals and individual rights.
And just quickly, a commercial note from Brazil. H&M opening its first store.
Yes, H&M opened in Sao Paulo. Planning more stores, even selling some locally made shoes and beachwear. Low threat, B2, purely commercial. It looks like strategic diversification for H&M, moving away from maybe stagnant European markets. Brazil's attractive tax reforms, growing e-commerce.
Okay, and finally, let's take a quick look at Oceania. Policy debates, stirring things up there. NSW Health in Australia criticized over a proposed social media gag on frontline workers.
Yeah, this one's tricky. A draft policy would require health workers to report colleagues' social media posts, restrict discussing patient care online. Low threat, C2, policy and speech. It sparked accusations of gagging whistleblowers. You hear nurses calling it muzzling frontline heroes. The health minister insists it's about patient privacy. It really highlights that tough balance. Patient confidentiality versus legitimate staff concerns or even whistleblowing needs careful handling to maintain trust.
And also in Australia, economic policy, the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, is looking at company tax reform.
That's right. He welcomed a productivity commission report suggesting lower corporate tax rates, maybe down to 20% for smaller companies. Low threat, B2, economic policy. The thinking is pretty straightforward. Economic growth forecasts have been downgraded, so they're looking for ways to boost investment and productivity. Lowering business taxes is one lever they're considering.
And maybe ending on a positive note from Oceania, the Women's Rugby World Cup saw some big scores.
Absolutely. Australia beat Samoa 73-0. Canada beat Fiji, with Julia Schell scoring a record 6 tries in one match. Incredible performance. France and Scotland also won their matches. Just low threat, C2, sporting news, but some great results as teams jockey for playoff spots.
Okay, so we've covered a huge amount of ground: scorching heat waves, domestic militarization, complex diplomacy, economic shifts. Let's try and pull back for a second. What are the main threads connecting these dots?
Yeah, zooming out, a few patterns emerge, I think. We definitely see links between persistent insecurity and populist-style governance. Look at the U.S. militarization approach, or El Salvador's anti-gang drive, popular but controversial. Climate disruption is undeniable and hitting supply chains. Europe's heat, Pakistan's mudslides, these aren't isolated incidents, they have global ripple effects. We're also clearly seeing a more assertive global south finding its voice on economic fairness. Africa's MAP campaign, the AFCFTA push, these are significant moves. And China's strategic gains in Latin America, often linked to the consequences of U.S. policy like sanctions. That seems like a key geopolitical pattern to keep watching.
Okay, given all that, let's translate this into some practical takeaways. What are the crucial considerations for you, our listener, processing this intelligence?
Right, recommended actions. Let's start with priority 1. For chief operations officers, really stress test your energy resilience plans, especially for European operations. Think about grid capacity in extreme heat. Maybe look into passive cooling, microgrids. Those heat waves mean brownout risks, potential production impacts. Also, priority 1, this one for chief security officers. If you have operations in U.S. cities seeing National Guard deployments, engage with local law enforcement, community leaders, monitor those social tensions, adjust your corporate security. Militarization can unfortunately lead to unrest affecting your people and assets. Proactive engagement is key.
Okay, priority 1's covered. What about priority 2?
Priority 2. Chief procurement officers should look hard at diversifying supply chains away from sanctioned or politically unstable places, particularly in Latin America right now. Explore partnerships where the rule of law is stronger. Venezuela's China ties, El Salvador's due process issues, they highlight sovereign risk. Diversification reduces that exposure. And another priority, too, for chief executive officers. Consider supporting African market entry strategies, align with AFCFTA initiatives, maybe even engage with that MAP campaign outreach to build goodwill. Africa's push for reform creates real long-term opportunities. Early engagement positions you as a partner.
Makes sense. And priority 3?
Finally, priority 3 for chief human resources officers. Take a look at your internal social media policies. Learn from that NSW health backlash in Australia. Ensure policies protect confidentiality but don't stifle legitimate employee concerns or whistleblowing. Finding that balance maintains trust and avoids the reputational hit from looking like you're imposing gag orders.
Okay, so as you reflect on all these dynamics, climate adaptation, power shifts, domestic policies, maybe consider how these things that seem separate might actually converge in unexpected ways, how they could shape the landscape of tomorrow. What ripple effects might we see, even from these seemingly small shifts today? That wraps up our look at the Saturday, August 23rd, 2025 Intelligence Brief, brought to you here on this Sunday, August 24th Deep Dive. Don't forget you can follow us on YouTube and Spotify. Share your thoughts, like, comment, spread the word if you find this useful. Stay informed, stay sharp, and hope your Sunday is calmer than a closed trading floor.